Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'll just go through a quick introduction of who I am, what I do, and what I hope to be doing in the future. There's only one rule in this place, and that is you've got to have fun. Okay? I'm not here to teach. I'm here also to learn from you guys. So I'd really appreciate some feedback. Right. I'm George Santos, as that says. Started off my flying career after a degree in engineering in 1990, where I was sponsored by Bristol Helicopters. Flew for the first 10 years. I was trained in the UK. Flew for the first 10 years, the 212 and the Twin Scroll, also it's called the EC355, for 10 years in Nigeria. Thereafter, moved to the UK and flew with CHC for 11 years in the North Sea, flying out of Aberdeen. After that, I left CHC in 2011. And between then and now, I've been running my own consultancy. And I have spent a few stints in Nigeria running and starting up training and standards departments. Right now, I think it was 5 months ago, I left Bristol Helicopters to fully get engaged in what I'm looking for the last part of my aviation career, and that's in drones. So involved now with what they called unmanned air vehicles here in the United States, drones. Using drones for mapping, modeling, aerial views, etc., etc. I am also a licensed drone pilot here in the United States. Now, what brings me here? Well, I have been doing this for a number of years, and that has stemmed from my background in CRM, Crew Resource Management and Human Factors, which I started around about the mid-90s when I was in Bristol. And that has led me on to go deeper, or expand, I should say, into different areas of organizational development to deal with basically the non-technical side of things. Non-technical basically means the human factors, the human behavior. And I just like the human brain and how it works. No one understands it, okay? Now, like I said, I would expect quite a bit of feedback from you. I'm not here to teach. We'll start off with an introduction, which will then lead us on to an interactive presentation. Can I get rid of that, please? This sync, it keeps syncing. Yes. Interactive presentation where we'll talk about deep change. Does anyone have an idea of what deep change is all about? Okay, so it doesn't matter what I tell you, you're going to believe anyway. No. Deep change then leads to slow death. And then we'll talk about what your new risk management model in your different companies should look like. We'll then go on to a case study. Now, the case study would be, I'll show you a picture, and it actually is very similar to an experience that a particular company had that was involved in a number of years ago. And I'd like to see how you guys would think as we go through that case study. And then we'll just wrap it up with a conclusion at the end of the day. Any questions? Do ask questions, please, if you do have. Okay. Risk management, deep change, and inevitable progression. Now, what we're going to do today is we're going to look at different concepts initially for the introduction. We're going to look at different things that we need to consider, not necessarily teaching you what to do, but to get you to consider certain things. Just have to excuse me. I'll see if I can get rid of this. Well, apologies for that. We look at different concepts, and we'll start with that word, inevitable. Inevitable, basically, as you know, means ain't nothing we can do about it, okay? We just have to go through it. Have you all heard, or do we actually use that idiom, or whatever it's called, you know, that if it ain't broke, don't fix it? What do you guys think about it? Does it make sense? Do you agree with it? Right. Fantastic. You need to understand what's broken. But then, what if it ain't broke? Do we start fixing something that's not broken? Say again? Not fix it, but there's nothing wrong with improving a current system. I mean, I wouldn't suggest to leave it static, right? Exactly, and that's the very point of what we're talking about today. So that actually gives me it gets me twitching. You know, whenever I hear people say, "Well, if you don't broke, don't fix it." It's worked for so many years. That really goes against my grain, and you'd understand very shortly. So how do we fix it? If we agree that we have to fix what's not broken at times, I do appreciate what you're talking about. How do we fix it? I'll start with this accident. This was in 2009. This particular aircraft ditched. It was a controlled flight into, well, terrain, but we'll call it water. So controlled flight into water. An approach was being made offshore. This was in the North Sea. And a perfectly serviceable aircraft, the EC225, which is designed really actually not to crash itself. It has, the automation system is so good that it prevents itself from crashing. Those systems are disabled and the aircraft was flown into the water. Shortly afterwards, I was the CRM manager with CHC Europe then. I had an aviation consultant of one of the major clients that we had. And he came to me and says, "Hey, George, yes, we need to look at new procedures, new procedures to prevent this from happening again." And the first question I asked was, if the guys had followed the rules as we have today, would they have crashed? Nope. So why do you want to change the rules? Because that's not the root. The root cause is trying to find out why he didn't obey the rules. It's a human factor thing. And we don't really have that much time to go deeply into it, but the reason why, I mean, there are many reasons, but one of the main reasons why, guys, is his son had committed suicide about 5 months prior to that. And people who are psychologists know that, when you have an initial trauma, you have the effect and people get down, etc., etc. And then they start recovering. But then round about 5 to 6 months, there's another resurgence of that situation. So when you have a system where you're looking like a chief pilot or whatever, one of the things you want to do is someone goes through a divorce or something major in their lives. 5 to 6 months later, you've got to keep an eye on them because that's when things like this happen. It's happened, I have about 3 cases I can roll up right now, but for time we'll just go on. So that was it. It's not about coming up with new rules. It's about understanding what the root causes were. And I challenge anyone here today to point out any accident or incident that hasn't started off with a human factor or human behavior problems. So how do we fix it? Well, do we fix it with more regulations? Well, I guess I've answered that already. Well, not all the time. At times you might have to do that if the regulations are not appropriate. If you look at a graph of the number of accidents and incidents against the number of the level of rules and regulations, you'd expect that to happen, right? The more rules we have, the less accidents we have, right? That's what you'd expect. Is that correct? What happens?
It's too complex. People can't keep up with the workload.
Exactly. And then that happens. You have rules, fine. It doesn't make sense to have no rules. But I'll take that with a pinch of salt because we're going to address that later on. But then you start bringing in rules and regulations and you start to reduce safety. But then it gets to a stage where you have an optimum level of control, beyond which you start having that problem. And very sadly, I have spent the bulk of my life, 25 years or so, in the oil and gas industry. Very, very sadly, lots of companies operate around there, right? You get to a stage where I'll give a good example with the example I just talked about. Because right after that, the oil companies pushed for a new rule, a new solution. And they came up with something called, do we have any offshore pilots here? Right. Came up with this set of rules that was called the stabilized approach. Can't remember exactly what the full meaning was. But basically what it was we had a situation where people started trying so hard to follow the rules rather than actually flying. They were trying to hit so many targets that had been set that they actually lost the big picture. They lost the plot. Guess what? We're operating well in that area. And there were lots of situations that we had to deal with to correct that, to bring us back down that graph. Now, what are the symptoms of being on that side? Have a look at that picture. Why would that happen? Why would that happen?
Following the task and not thinking about it. Finding what works is something that's never going to hold.
Yep. Any other reasons? Yes. That actually is another thing that gets me twitching, ticking the box. I hate it. Yeah. One of the things here is this animal is used to being tied up. And he knows that, look, once I'm tied up, there ain't no way out. But hey, guess what? It can just walk away. It can sling the chair over its back or whatever and walk away. In the aviation world, something similar happened. This was quoted, was it 2 days ago? The Swissair Flight 111. The checklist, the cockpit fire checklist for Swissair was designed to last 28 minutes without a break, 28 minutes. And the last item, as you remember, was landed nearest suitable airport. Duh. Excuse me, I have a cockpit fire. Fire is not very good. Guess what? I want to get down as quickly as I can. That is number one. Look for a place to land, get down, and then try to fight the fire as you go down. Now, they had a culture then of you will follow the rules regardless. What do you guys have to say about that? Fantastic. Sweet for you there. Right. It turns your brain off. Guys, guess what? That is where lots of us are today. And you'll see examples of that. This is one. This is an airport somewhere in the UK, but those who live in Aberdeen would know it. Secret. And that's what that sign says. Duh. Those are radiators. They're designed to get hot. So why do we have to put up a sign warning people that something that's designed to get hot will get hot? Exactly. They become complacent, and as the gentleman says, it turns the brain off. And we get into a situation in our lives where we are so used to following the rules rather than thinking. But the rules won't always save us. Those who are pilots know that emergency procedures, you always have the emergency procedures there. The book's really thick, and it has so many procedures. But guys, there are many times the checklist won't help. You've got to think about what's going on, right? And there's a guy called Hans Moderman, and this is what it says. It says, the greater the number of prescriptions, the more the people's sense of personal responsibility dwindles. Very, very true. I have seen it in my professional life. I've seen it in my family life as well, with kids. My kids come, and when they're much younger, I'll come and go, hey, Daddy, how do you spell this word? And I go, well, have a look in the dictionary. Daddy, just tell me. Nope. Have a look in the dictionary. Because what I'm trying to teach you is to give you the skills to search for information rather than giving it to you, because you'd always depend on me. Now, with that understanding, he came up with this concept, which was proven actually, called the shared space urban planning. Has anyone heard of it? Okay. Now, it was put into place, in practice rather, in a place called Drachten in Netherlands, and it drove down the number of incidents and accidents at a major intersection in downtown, in the city center, by 89%. It drove down accidents at that junction by 89%. Can anyone hazard a guess what they did? A wild guess. Took all the walk-ins away. Mocking. Okay, good. Now, does anyone understand what he just said? Right. What they did was exactly that. They removed the notices. And the accidents went down from 9 per year to 1 per year. That doesn't make sense, does it? How can you remove warnings and notices and traffic lights and everything, and the accident rate drops? It's simply because of what these two gentlemen have said. What they did was convert instructions, that culture of obeying instructions without thinking, and put the responsibility back on people. We all drive. You know, you see a green light and you just go straight ahead. How many people actually look left and right when going through a green light? Be honest. Not many people do that, okay? And that's because that is the way we've been trained. Green means go and you go. But you could have a drunk guy, you could have a stoned guy, whatever, driving through the red lights. Yes, you do have the right of way, but it's also sensible to look left and right, okay? Now, I have a video of what the junction looks like. That's actually the junction. No signs whatsoever. No traffic lights, no give way signs, no stop signs, nothing. And you have bicycles, trucks, even the police, and everyone, fire trucks, everyone going. Now, this looks like chaos, doesn't it? But the proof of the pudding was in the eating, right? They drove down accidents to once a year. And what that then leads us to is to understand how organizations work. Now, we've talked about the fact that it's not about more and more rules. It's more about understanding how people think and trying to use that to make your organization work better. Now, every organization is made of a technical system, which basically is about what you do, right? You also have a strategic system, a political system, and a cultural system. All organizations have those four. And which would you say is the most difficult to manage? Cultural, why? Yeah, these people again. Guess what, guys? Let's do away with human beings. Just put machines everywhere. People are very difficult to manage. Not just talking of cultures, talking of age, talk of sexes, all sorts of variables in the equation makes it so much more difficult. So what that tells us is that all our rules must be dynamic. Basically, they have to follow the trend as we go along. What worked yesterday may not work today. And also, they do become less efficient over time. Guys, I have to stress that. It doesn't matter how fantastic your SMS or your risk management matrix or whatever it is, it will become less efficient over time. Why is that? Complacency, yes, that's a very big word. Hey, because that actually reminds me of, was it yesterday? Yes, it was last night. I can't remember his name now, the gentleman who was talking about his time in the Navy. And he says they rotate, was it every 6 years or something? 2 years, yes. Simply because of that, you need to keep people learning all the time. I attended a class here yesterday, and the guys from Willis Towers Watson said that. It says every cybersecure system today eventually gets hacked. So nothing ever is static. And same thing with your risk management system. Also, we have to keep our eyes on the big picture. Have a look at that video.
I'm looking at this fall, we call it common.
This is a Jamaican accent, so you might not understand what he's saying. But basically, the chicken just keeps trying the same thing over and over and over again.
Like that, right? They see no other way out in life than sitting down and doing one thing all the time. That doesn't work. This N has been here for the last 10 minutes doing the very same thing and not working. Look at her. And guess what? Right around the corner here. Look at that. Right here. Look at that.
Is that open?
These are open gate for her to go where she wants to go. And if she wants, she can fly over that wall right there because she has wings.
Right. She can go around and she can fly. She had two options. But how many times do we do exactly that? We've got a new system, we've got to drive it, it's got to work. I was when I worked with a company in my past, I wouldn't mention the name, there was a new flight planning system that was brought into the system. And it was written by people who had no idea of what aviation was. And secondly, they had less of the no idea of how helicopters flew. So you'd work out the system and you'd work out speeds like 80 knots or 70 knots or something for an approach, and it goes, can't do, because you're going to stall. Excuse me, sir, helicopters don't stall. So we went through all those phases of, the company went, you've got to work, you've got to make it work, you've got to make it work. But we lost sight of the big picture. And we have to keep our eyes on the big picture all the time. So yes, the lesson so far, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Not something we want to imbibe in our system. Also, slow and steady wins the race. Have you heard of that? What do you have to say about that? What if you can be fast and steady? I think I'll do better than slow and steady. And finally, this one really gets me. You don't want to reinvent the wheel. Oh man, that really does get me. Now let's talk about not wanting to reinvent the wheel. Let's look at the evolution of the wheel. Right, 8,000 BC, we had the stone wheel. It was very heavy, very rough, very slow. It took a long time to make. And guess what? Let's make it lighter. We've got wood. So we made it lighter. Hey, guess what? We can put in spokes to make it even lighter. Guess what? We can put rubber around for better grip and make it pneumatic, put in air to improve the ride comfort, and then go back to spokes to make the wheel lighter. So what you've seen over the years, up until what you have now, has been an improvement of the wheel. So where next do we go? Do we improve on the wheel? Or do we do something entirely different? What would you do? Printing them in 3D. Yeah, sure. So, but that's an improvement on the wheel. But we're going along the lines of deep change now. What deep change? Say again? Get rid of the wheel. Great. So what do we do? Yes, that has actually been done now. It's called magnetic levitation. Now, the maglev trains in Japan go an average of about 500 kilometers an hour. They don't have wheels. The people who designed these things went, well, look, we've got a stage where even if we print them in 3D to make them very light, they're still wheels. They still have to spin. So that limits how fast we can actually go. It causes a lot of friction, a lot of noise, more maintenance, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. So let's do something entirely and totally, completely different to look for a way to move things. Do we all understand what magnetic levitation is? Okay. Okay, for those who may not know, it's basically the trains and the tracks have opposing magnetic poles that lifts the train off the track, and basically the train floats in the air. And so that reduces friction, or actually eliminates friction entirely because there's no contact between the train and the track. And then the train is able to go at sort of high speeds. The only resistance the train has is the drag, the wind resistance. So what you call that is an improvement, and I'm going to start using the term incremental change. It's called incremental change. Going 3D printing. I don't know, there might be 4D, I don't know, stamping in the future, who knows, I don't know, whatever. But what you call this is deep change. We have to go through deep change very occasionally in the systems. Take a step back and look. We're not just looking to improve, we're looking to revise the whole thing. Is that a good thing to do? It's not a trick question. Is that a good thing to do? It depends. I like that. Why? What does it depend upon?
Too many variables.
Yeah.
To make a blanket statement.
Okay. Yes. There are lots and lots of variables. So The times you've got to go through incremental change, and the times you've got to go through deep change. And we'll be able to tell the difference very shortly. So a recap, we fix it before it breaks. Yes, the times you have to do that maintenance, you're maintaining your car. You also remember that more doesn't always mean better, okay? We must always go through a system of continuous and positive change or improvement. And just like she says, it depends on the situation. I'm not saying every single time you've got to go through deep change. What I'm saying is that you have to assess the situation and decide on which way to go. There are times you have to consider change rather than improvement. Okay, that then leads me to my story. This was my class in 1990. That's me, many pounds lighter. I got married and that's why this happened. Okay, I remember I was in school and I was learning, we went out with my instructor to learn how to hover. Helicopter pilots know that. Yeah, I've been taught, okay, the cyclic goes forward and backwards, left and right. Pedals turn the nose left and right, and the collective takes the aircraft vertically up and down. Simple, right? That's what you think. So, went to the field, he puts it in the hover, and he says, right, George, you have the pedals. Now, can you see that tree in the distance? Keep it on the nose. In my mind, I thought, yeah, piece of piss, there's nothing to it. Put my feet on the pedal, aircraft starts going right, I put in the left pedal, it starts going left, and guess what? The tree went to my back. I don't know what happened. The tree disappeared somewhere behind, and I just started spinning out of control until it took, well, my control, and it took control from me. Now, the two things which I wasn't aware of and which I wasn't doing. The first one was that I didn't give the inputs I was making time to manifest. In other words, for the pilots, they know that, look, if you're making an input, whatever input it is, you've got to wait to see the result of what you have done before you make changes. You don't go input, not working, more input, because when it does start working, it's going to go way out of control. And secondly, you've got to anticipate trends. You've got to anticipate trends before the inputs are required. Now, this might sound a bit technical. Now, I'm going to bring us back to reality here. Is that any different in the lives you live? Is that any different in your family life? Is that any different in financial or medical or safety-related world? Absolutely not. It's the same thing everywhere. What we tend to do is to react rather than respond. Are we all happy with the difference between reacting and responding? Well, a reaction basically is doing something without thinking. Responding is a thought-based action. And there's also the herd behavior, right? Everyone's doing this, so we're going to do exactly the same, so we keep in line with everybody. And we all tend to, operate in that kind of area. We have new policies, new processes in the industry, and we all follow without actually thinking whether or not it's relevant to us. Someone mentioned something at one of the talks on Tuesday, and on yesterday, because I'm losing time now. And I thought that was really fantastic. He says, when you get an email or something asking you to do something, how many of us actually are bold enough to say, give me time, I'm thinking about it? We tend to want to go and give an answer straight away. There are times we have to do that. Warren Buffett, I'm sure we all know who he is, says the stock market is a device for transferring money from the impatient to the patient. Do you agree with that? I spent a stint in the financial world as a licensed mutual fund dealer and insurance guy, and one of the things I learned there was you don't follow the market. You don't go, well, something's gone down, sell, everyone sell. No, you do it before it happens. You have to be able to anticipate what's going to happen. So we need patience in designing our new risk management model. We need patience and anticipation. The inputs have to be appropriate. We have to have the inputs as informed inputs. We need to study. We need to understand how the system works. And they have to be dynamic. They have to be dynamic. Do you have any questions so far? Good. Well, not good, but we just go on. Right, so we'll go into deep change. Those in the oil and gas industry have seen that a lot over the last few years. Things have really gone down. But is that all bad news? Why not? It's going down.
The industry's cyclical, right? So it's just something to anticipate, if you will.
Yes.
Look ahead, good times are good, but there's going to be a roll-off, and that's where we are right now. So it's not all bad news.
Yeah, it's not all bad news, and I do agree with you, and that's because what has the slide says as well. It's not all bad news. Are we able to do that? Take things back off? What kind of changes do we have to go through? Not just necessarily the oil and gas industry. Where else? What kind of changes do we have to go through to do that, to turn things around? Would you think it would be more of an incremental change or a deep change? More of a deep change. Exactly, and I love that word. And we're going to come to it, bold. You've got to be bold. You've got to make bold statements that, hey, guess what? I have to change the way I think. I have to change the way we do things here. We've got to make bold statements. So what is deep change? That's a definition. It's a process where changes are made to ensure that the damaging effects of routine are minimized. Routine is good. It's a bit like fire. Could be good, could be bad, depending on how you use it, right? So damaging effects of routine are minimized. And that tells us we must have continuous alignment. How often do you guys, in your organization, how often do you look at the systems you have on ground and check out exactly how useful they are to your situation at that point in time? How often do we do that? Not very often enough. I'm not trying to make you feel bad because, hey, guess what? It works in the family life, your marriage, your whatever, relationship with your kids, the way you drive. You've got to continually check yourself out and to see how relevant you are. We've talked about incremental change, which is just an extension of the past. It's an improvement. So my starting point is what I've done before, and then I want to improve on it. A deep change is stop. Forget about the past. Have a holistic view of where we are today, and let's, guess what, reinvent the wheel. Get rid of the wheel if we have to. Go with magnetic levitation in our businesses. Deep change, we've beaten it to death, is an entirely new and relevant framework. I will illustrate it with this thing I call the timeline. I'm sorry, the quality of the color quality is not that good, but basically, if you look at life, life changes all the time. And I'll illustrate that with colors. Situations change, businesses go down, hurricanes come, earthquakes. So many things happen that affect our business. With deep change, what we want to do is to ensure that every single, I'm not going to tell you how many years or months you're going to do it, but you take set times in your business life and go, right, now let's have a look at where we are, what we're doing. Now, is it relevant to the environment we operate in? If it's not, then you make a change. So at each of those checkpoints, you can see this company has been making changes, right? Incremental change, on the other hand, yes, it's a perfect system. It worked well before. So it's a really good system, and we'll stick to it. But it becomes less and less relevant with time. And then you get to a stage where you say, well, that shape's not working. So we'll improve on it and change it into a triangle. It's still the same color, but you've just changed the way you do things. And guess what? You get to the end of time where you're the wrong color and the wrong shape for what business, for what environment that you have to run your business in. So I'll take you through some examples of situations where you've had deep change. We all know the car maker Lamborghini. That's the one the blue one you bought last week, was it? Was it 2 weeks ago? Exactly. Right. So let's ask a question here. Which is the Lamborghini? Why do you say both? That's a tractor. Exactly. That's a Ferrari. Most people can't tell the difference anyway, but that is a Lamborghini. Now, was it you who said they've diversified?
Yes,
From what to what?
basically from your high-end sports car to now.
Flip it. Fioruccio, do we have any Italians here? Okay. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it very well, but Ferruccio rather, Lamborghini, started the tractors, building tractors in 1948. And he continues till today. The supercars didn't start till 1963. Now, most people don't know that Lamborghini also make tractors. But why do you think, can anyone hazard a guess why he decided in 1963 to start making supercars as well? Sorry, I love that. Tractors are too slow. Yeah. Good man. Yes. He looked at Ferrari and he went, why does it have to have the market? I make tractors. My tractors do very well. Hey, guess what? Let's go after Mr. Ferrari. And then he started the business. And I'm not saying he's as big as Ferrari today, but he's done very well in the business. Everyone knows what the Lamborghini is, though we might not drive one ourselves. Secondly, McDonald's. When you see that sign or that name, what do you think of? Feeling ill. And hey, guess what? McDonald's started the business making burgers and stuff, but what we consider bad food, right? But in 2005, they also went through a deep change. They discontinued 8 well-known products. Now, don't ask me to name them. And they changed their focus from what you call soul food, right, to healthy foods. And they did that to remain in line with changes in the societal eating habits. They noticed that, hey, look, this business has worked so well for us in the past. So do we just continue making fat boy burgers and stuff? No. People are beginning to get more and more conscious. So guess what? We want to remain in business. We go for a deep change. Rather than trying to make a better burger, they went to start making salads and stuff like that. Do you get the picture now? So where does it start? First of all, you've got to set new expectations for yourself, right? It's not a case of you have to consciously try to, if you can, remove the past and set of new expectations. You also have to go through adaptive confidence. Now, adaptive confidence means, like someone says, do it scared. You know, the lady here just talked about being bold. That's what it is. I am scared, but guess what? I'm going to go ahead with it. And I'm going to drive it through, and I'm going to make sure that what I'm doing does work. I've done my research, and research tells me that I need to take a turn. I need to take a complete turn from what I'm doing, and I go through that. You've got to act with people. Guys, I cry about this on my horse everywhere I go. You cannot run a system, a good company system, without the people. It's impossible. You have to have buy-in from them. You have to eschew denial. Remember, we also had that story about when the space shuttle, had that incident on one of the wings and got up, blah, blah, blah. And people knew what the problem was, but they buried their heads in sand. That's what denial is. You know there is a problem. You may not have a solution for it, but then finally, it begins with self-change. You have to change. I'm not sure how many MDs or CEOs we have here, but basically you cannot change a system if you don't believe, if you don't yourself go through self-change. A big example of deep change was Henry Ford, and he said that if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have asked for faster horses. Do you get it? They would have asked for faster horses, but guess what? I'm going to go totally different. I'm going a totally different direction. And that's why we are where we are today. Then on to slow death. Now, if what if you don't regularly go through deep change, if you don't regularly consider deep change or go through deep change, you get what you have is slow death. I'll give you a few of obsolete laws. I'll start with obsolete laws. I'll skip that for now. In Canada, in Alberta, businesses are required to provide rails for horses. It's still law till today. Well, I live in Calgary, in Alberta. I've never seen any business with rails for horses. That was a law that was relevant, I don't know, 100 years ago, before Henry Ford decided to do what he did. Why do we still have that law in place today? Complacency, one of them. Well, yeah, okay, you know, it's too difficult to take it out. We'll just continue with it. Another one. I love this one. So we have only one lady here. If your husband asks you to go to Arkansas on holidays, be careful. Okay? Now, I know you would never do that today, but it is there. It still exists, and this is a really nice one. In the UK, so if you're pregnant, you can relieve yourself anywhere you wish. Now, you wouldn't do that today, but these are examples of laws that have existed in the past but have been carried over till today. And a very good example of a system that has gone through slow death, what was the Roman army? I'm sure we all know about the Roman army and how well-oiled. They were lean, mean fighting machines. Those guys were top of everything, right? And they were in power, basically, for about 500, just over 500 years. But they're not anywhere today. Where's the Roman army today? Does it even exist? It doesn't exist anymore. So what happened? How could such a fantastic, those in the military tell me that there's still a lot of principles that the Roman army used then that are still being used today. Those guys were good. What happened? What caused the downfall? Well, one of the reasons was they had an over-reliance on tried and tested methods. It worked. It's always worked, and we continue to use those rules, use those systems. Guess what? The enemies actually got to understand, hey, this is what these guys do. They read them, and then they worked out ways to go against them. What should they have done? They should have come to this session and learned about deep change, right? They should have worked out, hey, look, we are good at what we do. We want to continue. We need to stop and think about how effective, how relevant what we're doing still is today. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's probably what they used to say in Latin. I don't know if anyone speaks Latin here. Slow death occurs when an ill-advised and conscious choice is made to allow unaddressed problems, blah, 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 blah. Lots and lots of words. Don't like too many words. Put it this way. Slow death is when you have ill-advised choices, allowing unaddressed problems to fester, and then the system collapses. Unaddressed problems to fester, and the system collapses. What are the symptoms? Because you're virtually all leaders here. There are many symptoms in the company, but I'll go through the symptoms with leadership. And the first one is concentrating more on figures and policies rather than tangible changes. Why? Why do we do that? Yeah, and that makes you look good to your boss or to the board, right? So, oh yeah, these guys have been very bad. So tell you what I've come up with is this set of procedures and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, good, boom, I get my bonus. But I have not really helped the system, have I? Secondly, giving up organizational good, taking care of themselves. Guys, I don't know what you feel, but I personally really dislike the bonus culture. As a professional, I really dislike the bonus culture. Can anyone work out why I dislike it? Yeah. Now, if I very often we're always torn between that bonus for myself to get my new Lamborghini, the blue Lamborghini, or doing something that will benefit the system that may not show up till 5 years' time, by which time I would have left, and the new guy comes in and gets the benefit for it. No, I'm going to do something that looks good today, that may crumble in 2 years, but who cares? I'm away. I got my bonus and I'm gone. That's the reason why I dislike it. I really do dislike it. I mean, I'm not in a place to make changes anywhere, but wherever I talk, and I talk about this, it's, yes, I know the bonus culture is supposed to help you to encourage the person, the CEO, to get as much as they can for the system. But just like we have those graphs of accidents and incidents, you know, it gets to a point where it actually becomes detrimental to the health of the company. Another sign or another symptom is people losing faith in leadership. That CEO, he's crap. He doesn't know what he's doing. And it's not just leadership of organizations, leadership, political leadership as well, or it doesn't matter. Whenever you have a leader and people lose faith in the leader, then you have that issue going on. And finally, training to the letter of the law. I had an experience once I knew of somebody who, the client, this was a helicopter company, the client had specified that all pilots had to go to the simulator once a year. Okay? Now, what does that mean to you? Once a year means once, generally every 12 months, right? So what this company did to save money, because the pilots had to travel far away from their base for the training, to cut down on all kinds of bills. But the trainings were always arranged after Christmas. So they'd go to the center on Boxing Day or 27th and go through the training for that year, stay the year, into the new year, and start another set of trainings from the second and get signed up for 2 years. Because they've done it in, say, this year, 2017, and 2018. December and January. That's training to the letter of the law. That's absolutely, it's irresponsible. But you're doing that to cut costs. So that is another sign of slow death creeping into the system, where all I'm doing is looking out for the finances for my personal bonus. The consequences of ignoring deep change is slow death. It is as certain as the sun rising tomorrow. It is your organization, regardless of your whatever it is, political party, your business, whatever it is, will always suffer slow death if you don't go through deep change. Now, don't ask me how often. It depends on your system. It depends on what you do. So what does this new risk management model look like? Now, the summit, the theme for the summit this year is about managing the risk. And I like that. I'm not sure if the color comes out well. Not as robust as we think. It could be not as robust as we think. And I thought, well, that is something the industry really does need to think about right now. The definition of risk from the Oxford Dictionary is a situation involving exposure to danger. A very simplistic definition, yes. Now, would you consider this risky? Is there anyone who would say no to that? I like that. Now, the people riding the back would say no to that, but all you guys would say yes, okay? Now, what if a volcano had just erupted and the lava was flowing towards them? Is that risky? Exactly. So risk is very relative. Now, to you guys, oh, come on, that's super risky. No helmet, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them on the bike. Come on, I mean, that's silly. But you have to look at the circumstances that have led to that action, okay? Now, we all talk about seatbelts. I know seatbelts save lives. I must confess, the times in my recent past that I chose not to put on a seatbelt in a particular situation. And that was because I was working in a part of the world where there was a high incident of hijacks, right? So basically, we would travel in the bus. Now, the bus never went above 20 or 30 miles an hour because we were always in traffic. We never went very far. So seatbelts are there to stop you from being thrown forward and being thrown around in case of an accident. Now, I worked out that risk to the other risk of having hijackers or insurgents, whoever, boarding the bus and me trying to get out. Because when you panic, you know the way it is. You panic, you want to get up and you start trying to press, trying to get out, just to get out of the window or whatever. And I considered both. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to use a seatbelt for this. Because the seatbelt is there to prevent me from being propelled. We're not going that fast. But I'd like to get out as quickly as I can if this does happen to us. So risk is very relative, but it also depends on your particular situation at this time. So what should your new risk model look like? I don't know. And why don't I know? Why would I say that? I'm supposed to be talking here about risk management, and I'm telling you I don't know what your new model should look like. Why is that? Because I'm dumb? Well, you might consider that. No, because I don't know what your system is all about. It's as simple as that. There's never, in this whole world, there's never, in this business rather, there's never a one-size-fits-all. My CRM background, see if I have enough time to tell the story. In my CRM background, I had a situation once where, this was in the UK, I was approached by a regional Scottish airline on a Saturday. I got a call on Saturday, and they said, oh, George, can you run an initial CRM course for us next week? I went, possibly. But what I need to do is to come into your company. I'll go around the organization 2 or 3 days. I need to understand what your issues are. I need to speak to your pilots, your engineers, speak to you, speak to management, speak to everybody, see how things are going, and then I'll devise a course to deal with the issues that you have. And his response was, no, George, we don't need all that. Just come in and run a course. I mean, sorry, I cannot do that. I cannot do that because you cannot train to what, I cannot train rather to what I know. I have to train to what you need. So I don't know what your new risk model would look like. But what I do know is which is what I've done so far, is to bring up things for you to consider, for you to give you food for thought of what to consider. Every organization, for the new risk management model, it has to be dynamic. And I like that word. It has to be dynamic. How do we make it dynamic? What are the pointers? How do we make these things dynamic? It's all well enough for me to say, yes, it's got to be dynamic, but how do we do that? How?
We typically look at criteria as dynamic as speed, certain speed to complete something. Usually size matters when you talk about dynamics. So is it a large change or
Yeah.
small, right? So I mean, there's just some basic criteria for dynamic.
Yeah. You've got to have appropriate inputs. The fact that it worked in another company, the fact that it worked in CHC doesn't mean it's going to work in Bristol. The fact that it worked in, I don't know, CNN doesn't mean it'll work in Fox News or whatever. Every organization is different. Remember, whatever rules or whatever regulations, whatever procedures, whatever laws, whatever company policies you have today will, as sure as eggs are eggs, will become less efficient over time. Remember that more doesn't always mean better. You may require a change of what you call the winning formula. When I was in CHE, we rolled out the ISMS. Everyone had the safety management system, and we rolled out the integrated safety management system, and it was a fantastic system. I'm not sure, is anyone from CHE here? Right, do you still have the ISMS? Okay, has there been any, well, I left CHE in 2011, so has there been any major change to it today? Probably not, yeah. Now, it is something that, I'm not criticizing CHC. I really do love the company. I'm not just being whatever, but it is something that needs to be considered. It was a winning formula at one point in time, but is it still relevant? If it's still relevant, fantastic, we keep it going. But if it's not, we need to go through either incremental change or deep change, depending on what's required. You have to give inputs time to manifest before corrective actions are taken. So basically, your boss comes or the board comes and says, hey, CEO, we're losing money here. We want you to make changes. And then you make changes. And they come in 2 weeks and go, well, nothing has changed. You have to give things time, right? Anticipate trends before you put in the corrective actions. And you must act with people. You must act with people. They are very complex as opposed to machines. People are very complex, but you must act with people. Why do I keep stressing that? Guys, let's just discuss that for a few minutes. Why do I keep stressing acting with people?
I'd say because any system you have is reliant on people. I mean, if you try and improve a system without acting with the people, it's not going to improve.
Yeah. First of all, you're going to have the problem with rolling it out. I mean, those who work in change management or management of change know that there's the part, there's a one of the tenets that talks about staff buy-in. You have to have buy-in from the people. Otherwise, it will not work. It will not work. Right. So do we have any questions so far? Okay, we'll go through a case study. This is where you have to do some work, and I take a break. I want you to have a look at that picture. I'll give you a few moments to look through. It's a staircase, yes, as you can see, and you can see that that's worn there, right? I don't know what material, but it does look like granite or something, granite, right? Now, why has that worn out there? The railing, okay? So basically everyone just goes up that way and down that way because of the railing, right? So you have the one section here and you have the two section there. Right, the first question is, should these stairs be fixed? Now don't be too quick to answer. Should they be fixed? And secondly, how would you fix them? What points would you consider before fixing them? Now, before you start, this is going to be a group exercise. Each table, okay, yes, we do have people paired. I'd like you to discuss this amongst yourselves, but I'll tell you a story. It's a true story, and that would lead you into your discussions. And then at the end, we'll work out how we progress with this. There was a particular company, it was a factory somewhere in the UK. And they had a flight of stairs that had uneven steps, right? The steps were not, how steps are normal. Now, the way the human mind works, how when you start a flight of steps, you kind of look at the first few, you take the first 1 or 2 steps, your brain kind of keys into what it feels like, and you don't look down any longer, you start looking at the top, because then you can feel your way as you go up, right? That's the way the motor function in your brain works. Start with the first 2 and you get it right through. But this particular factory had defects in a few of the steps. Some were cracked, some were broken, etc., etc. And there were no accidents. Everything worked out well. A new CEO comes in and he says, no, that's unsafe. The steps are not even, they're worn out, they're cracked, whatever. So what we're going to do is to fix all the steps. Guess what happened? People started falling over, breaking their legs and rolling down the stairs and all that. Why? Well, it was a good thing to fix the steps, right? But why did that happen? Yes, they were conditioned to the mistake. So was it a bad thing to have fixed the steps? I don't know. You tell me. So I'd like you to discuss amongst yourselves. Just take each table at a time. First question is, should we fix these? I guess the obvious answer you guys would come up with would be yes. You could say no, yes, I don't know. But then if you do want to fix it, what are the things you'd consider? So I'll give you a few minutes to do that. I'd like you to throw answers to me very shortly. Okay, gents. There's no rush. We have very good time, so feel free to. Does anyone need any more time? Okay. So first question is, should they be fixed? How many tables agree that they should be fixed, and how many agree they should be fixed? Number one. You all agree they should be fixed. Why?
Did everybody back there say yes?
Okay, let's go for a show of hands then. Who believes the stairs should be fixed? Okay. Now, there's no right or wrong answer, right? Okay? It's not, hey, George, now I wonder what George is thinking. What is the golden answer? No. So why do you think they should be fixed?
Well, I just want to qualify that, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we just need to ask some questions first.
Yeah.
We don't have all the information,
Okay.
so we kind of like, there's another step between one and two, or maybe prior to one, where you find out what the environment is, who are the people, what's the weather conditions, the well lit, you know, what are the factors that influence here?
So basically what you're saying is that you've got to start a process to try to find out more about it or just ignore it. Now, okay, we'll come back to the yes, they have to be fixed, and the no, they shouldn't be fixed. How many people said that? Yeah?
Well, I think before we get to the no, it shouldn't be fixed, I think if you just invert those two, the change management process will identify why it is this current system is in place. May not be anything wrong, so I would say first, we want to invert that, make a 2-1 and 1-2, and then after we do that, we will then know for sure, based on information found, whether or not we need to fix said steps.
Fantastic. Absolutely. Now, yes. Now, we have mentioned that very briefly in the past. It's not about me as a CEO or whatever I am coming up and saying, well, it's bad, fix it. We've got to go through a change management process. And I like what you guys said as well. We don't have enough information. Okay? Now, let's just go on with what we have right now, the information we have. Let's assume they shouldn't be fixed. Okay, we start with this group and go to the next group. Let's assume they shouldn't be fixed. You've gone through your change management process and you go, well, look at the statistics. You know, we have 1,000 people every day going up and down, and we haven't had an injury in the past 3 years. Would you fix it?
If we refer back to your concept that nothing remains the same.
Great. Great. He did listen. So he gets a candy. Yeah. So the fact that we haven't had an accident for the past, that's why, another one of my pet peeves is I walk into a company, or I land, those days when I used to fly, you land on a rig and it says, this rig has gone 327 days without a day lost. And I go, come on, man. That doesn't mean you're safe. All this company has gone blah, blah, blah without a day lost due to injury. That doesn't mean you're safe. You could have been lucky 327 times.
How do you convince, because I'm in the same grain as you, that's weak to say, well, nothing's ever happened, why do we need to change?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're trying to anticipate hazards that the system hasn't anticipated because you have this data that nothing's ever happened, then how do you convince your management team that?
Okay. Now, can you hold that question, because that's a fantastic question. It was one of the last things I was going to address. If we don't address this, hold me out on it. Please just call me out on it. Okay. So, yes, so we decide we don't have to make changes, but that's not a good decision because we know that we have to change things. We have to anticipate things going wrong and all that. So, okay, so let's change something. Let's fix it. How do we do it? Now, that's a solution. Now, let's think. Now, here, remember here, we're always dealing with human beings. Put the railing on the other side. Why?
It's conditioned the folks using the stairs right now on that one side. You can maybe encourage them to use the other side, and they can recondition their bodies
Okay. Okay. Now there's something that, remember the example I gave of that company. Now people who go to work or wherever they go, they're so used to, they have that muscle memory. Would you think they would tend to stumble if you did that?
Potentially, yeah, that's why you can offer the option. They could try it and
Right.
on both sides.
Yeah, because there's something that you have to think about as well, which I just mentioned to that table over there. When you move the railings, what you've done is that you've broken the link with the past. They can go on to a situation where I'm used to doing that, I'm going up this way, to, hey, okay, everything's different. My brain then starts to work out a new procedure. That gets me thinking. So I'm not saying definitely you would never have any accidents, but what you've done is pretty good. That's a very good system. Someone also mentioned putting the railings in the middle. Would you do that? Could be. Same thing. Right. What other solutions would you have? Maybe just one more, and then we'll move on. Down the middle? Yeah. Yeah, or elevators, right? Or tell you what, no entry, go somewhere else. Yeah, absolutely. And I like the way you guys are thinking, because you have to think out of the box. You have to think at times by getting rid of the past and trying to work out what the future should look like. I don't have it in this presentation, but I think we do have enough time for me to run this by you. I want to see what you guys think. Imagine you're an architect, right? And you design an office block, like a really big complex, right? And then you have a car park in the middle. And you've got grass all around, okay? That's grass a lawn between the car park and the buildings. Where would you put the footpaths? How would you determine where to put the footpaths? I can feel the brains working really hard there. Shortest distance. Bingo. Now, we all tend, and that's not to put you down, sir, but what we all tend to do is look at solutions from our world, right? We look for the shortest distance, which is what you think is logical, but you've got to let the people choose. Because guess what? You always have to work with people. We've talked about that over and over and again. So tell you what, I would build the building, I'll build the car park, put in the lawn and leave it for a few months and see where people would normally walk along. Then I install the walkways that I may not be able to get it exactly to what people are used to, but something very similar to what they're used to. That way, I'm encouraging what I talked about 2 years ago. I'm encouraging conformance rather than compliance. There's a big difference. Compliance is I'm being told what to do. Conformance is I'm being convinced that what I'm supposed to do is good. So I'm doing it because I want to do it, rather than being told to do it. When you have a system that works with compliance, you have to keep policing them all the time. But when you get people to conform, because it's something that they naturally want to do, people tend to obey laws, and you have less policing in the system. Yes?
Don't you think, though, if you don't design it properly in the first place, you induce all the problems? So, for example, if they're having to walk across the grass
Yes.
in that interim period,
Yeah.
and it's wet in the middle of winter, you're now trailing grass and dirt and muck and everything into the building,
Yeah.
which now gives you another problem. You now have to keep that clean.
Yeah.
Just trip hazard, slip hazard,
Yeah.
so on and so on. So
Yeah. Now, those are the kind of things that you have to accept as what you call the teething problems. Okay, I can easily clean, and it's not going to last forever. I mean, I don't have it in this presentation. I might actually put it on for the next one, but you know, you often see signs like don't walk along the grass, or we'll walk over across the lawn, or whatever. You have to deal with human beings. You have to understand what makes them tick. And if you don't work with them, you're going to be forever chasing them down. So yes, I understand. You know, you get a lot of mud, grass, and all that. Fine. Okay, I can hire someone to clean up or get some extra hands for a few months. But when I come up with my final solution, remember we've always talked about time. You've got to give it time to manifest. When I finish with what I'm doing, then I have the problem solved forever. Because you have chosen, but not me as the designer or the CEO. Right, do we have any other questions? Okay. Right, so we'll go through the conclusion to round up. A guy called Robert E. Quinn, in one of his books on deep change, says individuals and organizations must adapt or die. It's blunt, it's straightforward, it's straight to the point. And there can be nothing more accurate than that. You must continue to adapt. I have done it in my life. I went through a deep change 4 months ago. Been flying helicopters for 25 years and been in the aviation industry, offshore oil and gas. And I've seen, I mean, when I started off and up until probably about 5, 6, 7 years ago, helicopter pilots for the offshore oil and gas industry never were jobless. They're always short of pilots. Then all of a sudden, flipped over. And you now have people who are being made redundant. Redundancy was something I'd never heard of in the industry. So I had to ask myself, well, George, you keep talking about deep change, blah, blah, blah. Are you going to apply it to your life? And that's the reason why I've done what I've done. Now, flying drones or running a business that depends on drones, is it the way to go? Well, I have an aviation background. I know that agribusiness will always be because people need to eat all the time. So tell you what, I'm going entirely different. I'm not asking you guys to do it, but there are times as an organization, you may have to change from making tractors only to including supercars. You may have to change from making Big Mac only to salads that are healthy at the end of the day. So how do we adapt? We have to do that by managing or inducing appropriate changes in the system. Now, I'll illustrate that. My background is aviation. That's what aviation was. I don't know what year that was, but long, long ago, attempts to fly to what you have today. I mean, this thing is just a marvel. Have you guys seen what the cockpit looks like? It's like an office. They basically fly off something that looks like an iPad, a computer. That's what the pilot has in front of him, punching things in. The whole concept has changed over the years. Now, we're talking about a standard cockpit in the 1960s. You had 2 pilots. You had a flight engineer. So the 2 pilots flew the aircraft, right? The flight engineer basically looked after the systems of the aircraft, looked after all the temperatures, pressures, blah, 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 etc., transferring fuel and all that. And then you had a navigator at the back who basically had all the charts and drawing lines and telling the pilots how to steer. With that system, you had the associated risk management culture. So we had to, that's when CRM came in, and you know, we had to work out how this guy speak with that guy, blah, 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 how that dynamic worked. But 2017, Mr. Flight Engineer has become a systems management system for the aircraft. Okay? The aircraft basically looks after itself to a very large degree. Mr. Navigator is now the flight management system, or the GPS, or the sat-nav, for most people to understand. These 2 guys now have to take on those additional responsibilities. They may not actually have to calculate and draw lines to find out which way to go, but it's now their responsibility to determine which way to go. They have to manage where they go. They have to manage the health of the aircraft, as well as fly the aircraft. That has changed the risk management matrix entirely. So I know we're talking about, 40, 50 years. But you've seen a major change in the way the cockpit is made up. What that tells us is we also have to change the way we look at risk. What is risky? People talk about, remember the Air France, I think it was 444, I can't remember, from Rio de Janeiro that was going to Paris and ditched somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean. There are many root causes for that, but what people talk about is, oh yes, the pilots are losing their flying skills. Or they're not being trained on how to physically fly the aircraft anymore. Yeah, okay, that has some merit in it. But there are also other things you have to consider, which we are not really going deeply into that at the moment. So finally, back to this theme of the summit. Can we truly manage all of the risk? We must be aware of what reality is. I think many times we find ourselves in that situation where things don't look good, but then we change the rules to make them look good. I wish, I don't know, that has never worked for me. I can actually be what, maybe 2 kilos or something, but we do that. We do that in many organizations today. And we do that because we're trying to make the situation fit in with what our desires are, and that won't work. Do you have any questions? Yes, your question. Right. Do you all remember what the question was? Can you repeat your question, please?
Have you been doing something a certain way for a long time and the data shows that there's not been any problems, but you foresee problems based on your experience? How do you convince management to make the change?
Now, thanks a lot for that. Now, every different environment would have a different answer. I would say the first thing you've got to understand how they think. What makes them tick? So if usually it's a bottom line, it's always money. Everything comes down to money. So yeah, I'm coming to that, yeah. Because everything always boils down to money. Now you brought in the political bit. Why do I want to move ahead politically in a company? It's so that I would become whatever. And what comes with that? It's power. Power breeds money at the end of the day. It's always down to money. So it could be political, it could be social, it could be technical, whatever it is. You look at what makes them tick. I'm trying to think of a situation where I may have done that in the past. Yes, I'll give an example, and it might not be directly linked to what you have, but it'll give you an example of what I mean. Now, CEOs, generally, a typical CEO is a kind of a guy, right? I'm the CEO, and that's who I am. And that's what makes him tick. Now, if you're able to address that, if you're able to use that to your advantage. Now, I was tasked, I was in Bristol then, this was in Nigeria. The CEO of the major client that we had been taken out to a new location that was being opened in the morning, and my task was to fly in the evening to bring him back. Now, part of the trip was going to take us offshore because the coastline was kind of something like that. So part of the trip was going to take us offshore, which meant he had to use the life jacket. So we landed, and I told the co-pilot to hand the life jacket over to him. Co-pilot comes back and says, he says he's not going to use it. I went, well, tell him that he's got to use it. That's the law. I'm the captain, and I'm telling him to use it. He's got to use it. The guy now comes round to me and says, what are you talking about? Your chief, now listen very well. He says, your chief pilot brought me out in the morning and says I don't need to use it. What would you do? Now, to save time, if I tell you that I was able to get him to use it stress-free, what do you think I did? Okay. Yeah?
You just simply state regulatory requirements.
He's the CEO of the oil company. He doesn't listen. And that's what I mean. What you're talking about is right. But the reality is that he is the CEO. And that's what I have to use to my advantage. So what I said was, yes, sir, I do understand. I don't know what happened in the morning. I don't know what the chief pilot did. But I'll give you two options, sir. One option without the seat, without the life jacket, would mean we have to fly along the coast because of the regulatory requirements. And that would normally take us about 55 minutes. And here in Nigeria, we're not allowed to fly at night. Helicopters are not allowed to fly commercially at night, except for emergencies or for training. So nightfall would be at, I can't remember what time it was, say 6:30 or something. And that would mean we have to land at some village on the way. So, but never mind, I'll call ahead and I'll tell your company to send a car to pick you up. And so that means you might eventually get back along the road probably about 11:30 at night. However, if you put on the life jacket, we can actually fly direct. And it'll take us 25 minutes. Either way, I'm quite happy to do what you want, sir. Guess what he did? I agree I did exaggerate a little bit with timing and all that. But what I did was put the decision, sent it back to him. But then I knew that he had that pride. I wasn't going to use authority or regulatory because that wouldn't work. Because all he would do is, I don't want that guy on my contract anymore. I lose my job. And guess what? The next guy would do it. And that wouldn't solve anything. But I got away. You have got to understand how people think and what makes them tick, and that's what you use. Does that answer your question? Right. So thank you very much. We're out of time. Tusen takk. Mange takk. Yeah, he's clapping because I just found out he was Norwegian. I really had a good time, and thanks a lot for the contribution from those who spoke, from those who believe we should change steps and those who believe we shouldn't. And if you do have any further questions, I will be available for a few minutes after, and do have a nice summit. Thank you very much.